Hello and welcome back to another Warlords of Draenor video. So there's recently been an update to the alpha patch notes and we've got a lot of great information. I'm going to be splitting them up into multiple videos so I can just give a nice, concise video and you can navigate. If there are any bars left, you can navigate with them, and I will give my personal opinions on the changes at the end. So first up, we're going to talk about itemization. Now, they are changing up how our gear works quite a bit in Warlords of Draenor. Essentially, what they want to do is increase the overall chances of a raid drop or something like that actually being useful to either yourself or just someone in the group. Currently, the system doesn't really achieve that as well as they want, with many raid groups winding up getting a bit of intellect plate and disenchanting it because they don't have a holy paladin. I know we have that problem all the damn time. So the intent there is pretty damn good in my opinion. It means that your gear will always be a little bit more fun and at least useful to someone. Now, a part of this involves reducing role-specific stats, because they just meant the bits of gear were locked off to a single class or something like that. So, as we know, hit, expertise, they're gone, but also dodge and parry are gone, and they've changed up spirit a little bit. And if you're a tank, you'll be getting a single tanking stat. It's a secondary and it's called bonus armor. And then healers will get a similar treatment, with spirit being just the healer stat. Of course, all of the other stats, secondary stats in the game, will be useful to every spec. What this means is that if you're a leather character and you're wearing a leather piece of armor, well, the primary stat in that piece of armor will be good for your current spec, and all of the secondaries that are not bonus armor or spirit will be good for your spec. And that just means that armor is a little bit more general, so the chances of it actually being useful to someone in the raid are quite a bit increased. One other thing is that some of the Mists of Pandaria gear will of course have to be tweaked to reflect all of these changes. So this patch should be coming out about 3 weeks before the expansion. That means that we'll have about 3 weeks to play around with our newly itemized Mists of Pandaria gear. So yeah, now that's basically their intent. Let's talk about some specifics. So what they've said is that bonus armor has been added. It will increase your armor, of course, which means you take less damage. Overall, it's just totally a tank thing, and I've got more to talk about that later on. And then also they have added a new secondary stat, which is called multi-strike. This will give a chance for spells or abilities to fire an additional time for 30% effectiveness. This only applies to the raw damage or healing of the spell, so not any specific ability related things like maybe stacks of a buff or just that kind of thing. There's also a new one, which is called Readiness. This will reduce some of your class-specific cooldowns, like the longer ones. So if you're a hunter, maybe, I was going to say Rapid Fire, but it's being removed, so let's just say Bestial Wrath would be on a shorter cooldown the more readiness you have in your character. And then, of course, as they said, all hit and expertise in the game will be removed and replaced with a universally useful secondary stat. So things like Readiness and Multi-Strike are going to be good for every single class and every spec, which is pretty damn handy. Hopefully, though, the specific numbers are balanced well. Anyway, so also, stats that are not useful in your current spec will be grayed out when you look at them on your tooltip, and they won't be counted on your stat sheet. And these are Spirit for non-healers, Bonus Armor for non-tanks, and then any primary stat that does not fit your class or spec. Overall, that makes quite a lot of sense. Now, they also said the dodge and parry will be replaced with bonus armor, and if a piece has got both dodge and parry, then it will be replaced with bonus armor, and then an additional secondary stat. They also said that head, chest, hand, wrist, waist, feet, weapon, shield, and offhand slots that have tank or healer specific stats will be replaced with universally applicable secondary stats when Warlords of Draenor drops. So that just means if you're, any of your Pandaria gear, that'll all just be swapped over, so it makes sense. Now, in terms of Warlords specific things, all new Warlords of Draenor plate armor will, as an example, have strength and intellect on it. Then any mail and leather will have agility and intellect, and of course any cloth will just have intellect. Now this means that even if your class uses 2 different primary stats, then you're going to be okay. So if you're a Holy Paladin, who is also a Retribution Paladin, then your base plate armor sets, that's, your head, chest, those kind of things, they will be useful for both specs. Now, of course, there is a little bit of customization in there, because your other bits of gear, like your trinkets and your rings and your neck, they can be whatever you want them to be, because secondary stats don't change. So your tanking set would have secondary like slots, like trinkets and things, that maybe stack bonus armor if you want. So there's definitely customizability there, but your main core bits of armor will be more applicable across your various specs. I actually think that's very nice, and let's just talk about my opinions in general. So this whole idea of the the main armor bits being useful for multiple specs is great to me. I've been often just very much put off bothering to, say, gear up my Holy Paladin, because I just couldn't be bothered to go and get all that holy gear. I already have a decent enough DPS set. And now that I can use that DPS set, or at least parts of it, in a holy build, that means that I'm going to be more likely to play a Holy Paladin. And I think that what people will find in general is that a lot of these hybrid classes, because of armor being generally a little bit more useful to everything, well, people are going to be able to do multiple specs easier. You can easily be a Restoration Druid that is also a DPS one. Maybe this will have a good effect on queue times, because if you think about it, there's definitely an incentive to queue if, say, the tank queue or the healer queue is a little bit less. That encourages more people to play multiple specs, and the barrier to doing that is greatly diminished by some of your main pieces being good for both specs. That could have great implications for queue times, and could lead to dungeons and LFRs and things like that being a good bit nicer, so I definitely like that. Now, in terms of items being useful to everyone, I think this is really nice from a raiding perspective. It's a bit of a bummer, actually, when, you're on your raid night and a bit of Holy Paladin gear drops, and no one's a Holy Paladin. You can't do anything with it. That's just a bit of a bummer. Now, that's still going to happen in Warlords, of course, that's still possible, but the chances of that will be greatly diminished. And okay, maybe it won't be a bit of gear that's personal to you, but the more bits of gear are useful to your raid, then the more your raid as one body will progress from week to week. So this does add to that sense of progression, and I guess it's just another way that RNG can't screw you over, and I think that really is a worthwhile and valuable change to the way your raid drops are going to be going. Definitely very excited to see about that. And then I think also it's just a little bit more clear and kind of clean. The current system wasn't really adding much gameplay, really, like things like, say, dodge and parry weren't particularly interesting. And on the topic of tanking, since bonus armor is more of a predictable damage decrease, it will emphasize the role of active mitigation. And because when Blizzard are designing bosses around you having a certain amount of armor in your character, bonus armor, then they know roughly what kind of percent of base damage your character will be mitigating through that. It's not like dodge or something where you can just flat out dodge the boss's attack. And that whole dodging thing basically led to, I think, was it like bosses like double striking or something back in Wrath, or just the way that raid damage is now very bursty against tanks in certain times. That shouldn't be needed as much, meaning that both healing and tanking should be a lot nicer. So we'll have to see, of course, see how all this plays out. This is alpha, actually. And because it's alpha, everything is subject to change. Every single damn thing subject to change. I guess the only concern that I might have is that some bits of gear will be a little bit too homogenized. But when I think about it, you're still going, if you really want to be a ultra successful tank or healer, you're still going to need to get some of those secondary slots, like your trinkets, your rings, your necks, and things like that, that have spirit or bonus armor or something that's a little bit more useful. So I think there'll be more flexibility, but people will still need to work on a single set of gear. It won't be just one set fits all. If one set fit at all, then I think people would just go into a raid, a few weeks later they'd be done. And that's definitely not what Blizzard wants in terms of the game's overall reward and feedback loop. So overall, really nice change. I'm glad they've done that, and we'll just have to wait and see how it plays out. Of course, it could all be absolutely awful when it gets into practice, but there's just no way to know. Hopefully the alpha will open up pretty soon, and hopefully I'll get into it, and when I do, I'll be able to give you some first-hand opinions and feedback on the whole thing. Anyway, that's been it for this video. Stay tuned to the channel. There will be many videos coming out over the next few days covering all this news, and just going a little bit more in depth. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.